You have to understand what the next person might or might not do, or how they think or do not think. The greatest freedom is to know yourself within yourself and to control yourself. There's nothing more liberating than that. I knew some men that took their own lives while incarcerated because of the hardships and the horrors that they endured, some of which, were men that I was very close to. Greetings and salutations. I'm Victor DeSordi. Thanks for watching my channel, 28 to Persevere. Fear cannot be without hope, or hope without fear. That is the theme of this video moving forward. Self-preservation is the first law of nature. So in prison, you go through various stages of despair and adjustment. It's a process, and you realize that process every day. And you also realize that in that life that you're living, the great spring of that life is hope and fear. And finding that balance between the two and being motivated by that is a process of self-discovery. It's an acknowledgement that adjusting to prison life and the stages of despair becomes a standard of your life. You have to acknowledge that. You have to come to grips basically with this reality that the hardships that you're enduring right now will basically your response to them will define you and your actions moving forward. I knew this. I knew this firsthand. I knew how important it was to not only study myself, but to acknowledge and study human nature, how men would or wouldn't respond, and how people thought of various walks of life, and to acknowledge it and also relate to it to a large extent, to understand the art of survival. You have to understand what the next person might or might not do, or how they think or do not think, their philosophy on life. It's going to basically affect your philosophy on life. The prime example is the yards. I mean, when things pop off in the yard and they shoot in the yard, it has nothing really to do with you, but you're going to be subjected to the hardships for the next 2 weeks being locked in your cell and enduring the shakedowns and the lack of food and the noise and the heat or the cold or whatever it is at that time. So, you really have to come to that understanding. And the despair that's around you, there's it's very dark and very depressing, and there's a multitude of suicides that you will be subjected to, acknowledging that are around you. The rate of suicides in upstate New York prisons is huge. I mean, it's incredible. The Max A prisons in particular. Auburn, I remember various men taking their lives, hanging up, finding them strung up the next day. Guards would find them. I knew some men that took their own lives while incarcerated because of the hardships and the horrors that they endured, some of which, were men that I was very close to. Some would OD on drugs, willingly, and it was horrific and depressing, and that depression can seep through you. And mental illness in prisons is so high. Where I was in the Auburn Correctional Facility, it was the Max A prison. Yes, it harbored the worst of the worst, but also harbored level 1. Highest level of mental illness, prisoners with extreme mental illnesses. So unfortunately, they weren't getting the care they should have been given, and being thrown into the abyss as the Auburn was, and I know still is. That could just encourage and just make you lose yourself within yourself, and your mental clarity and sense of lucidity will crumble over time from just the environment itself and the constant reinforcement of stress, what it does to the human brain. So, you have to acknowledge these stages of despair and what you're going to contend with, and you yourself are going to endure the various stages of anger that I know personally I went through in the forms of depression and isolation mentally. I was surrounded by people who felt always alone. So it was a stage of development, a maturation, and acknowledgement that I personally had to come to grips with and understand in order for me to really adapt to the world around me. Studying human nature, how people moved, and what they thought or didn't think, I knew that would affect me moving forward. And I had to understand that the stages that I went through that would basically define my way of conduct, they had to be something that I would put forth the effort to not only understand but overcome. And And my early maturation process was basically a standard of living that most people wouldn't even acknowledge. They would just be like, it's normal in prison. It's normal to feel that way, and it's nothing normal about prison. There's nothing normal. Like you can sit back and say, well, that's just the way life is. No, it's abnormal in every sense of the word. Anyone who's done hard time knows this. But in hindsight, you realize that you have to acknowledge it, which I did, and went through it, and came out stronger for it. And the trials and tribulations and how you are responding to these trials and tribulations in the long run really define you. It is your legacy, as I stated previously. So it's a life of doubt and emotional turmoil, and it's really something that you better come to understand, because if you don't, it will break you and it break your will. And once your will is broken, you lose yourself. And once you lose yourself in a place like that, they'll basically train you to think accordingly, that you're no longer you. And I always used to say to people that the greatest freedom is to know yourself within yourself and to control yourself. There's nothing more liberating than that. And in prison, you really have no freedom over your physical being. You're going to respond to the environment, and your responses will basically be the acknowledgement from everyone around you that that's what you're about. That's how you hold yourself. So it's something you really need to think about moving forward. If you're going to do time, or someone that has done time, and understanding that they went through the stages of despair, loss. Maybe they did or did not forgive what they did or did not do. Forgive themselves, I'm saying. Some people are consumed by guilt. Some people have no guilt whatsoever. I feel totally 100% justified in anger at the world, the government, or whoever. So it's interesting. It's an interesting concept to understand and acknowledge, and you know, um, it's complex. The complexities of life are off the charts in prison. Off the charts. Thanks for watching. Hit me up with a comment, press that like button, and subscribe if you haven't already. Go with the gods and persevere.